Alright, so I'm going to talk to you guys about law and software licenses. And I actually didn't know during this talk there was going to be so many people from outside of Quebec, so it's an issue that's specific to the law of Quebec. And it's particularly interesting because Quebec has got a legal tradition that comes from France and is based on the civil code, not on the English common law. So, unfortunately, everybody who's out of town, you can tune out. Less interesting for you guys, but I hope that for everybody else who's doing sort of in the tech industry, this might be sort of an interesting issue. And there's two things that I want to sort of achieve in my 5 minutes, and that's one, sensitize you to this issue, and two, maybe show you an example of something where the law. Most people assume that law is a very sort of static thing. You learn the rules by heart, you apply them, it's not very hard, you just go at it. It's actually a very malleable thing, it's very complex, and it has a lot of emergent behavior. This is, I think, a reasonably good example of where things are uncertain and you might want to take a little time to think about it. So, to set up the situation, you normally get in a lot of sort of commercial settings, you get a developer who will come up with the software, usually some kind of industry-specific software, and he'll license it to a distributor, and the distributor will say it to a specific client and install it and service it thereafter and all that. And a lot of times, the clients will come back and they'll complain about things. They'll either be completely displeased, they'll say, you built me some software, sold me some software that really doesn't do what I wanted it to do, and that it's completely unfit for what I wanted to achieve with it. I'll take it back. Or they'll just complain that it doesn't quite fit the specific thing, it's got some limitations that are not quite up to snuff, and they'll complain about it. Now, if it gets bad enough, that sort of thing ends up with the lawyers, and if it ggets bad enough after that, it ends up being in court, and people start arguing about it. And most of the time, they will apply a set of rules that go with contracts of sale and warranties of quality, which is actually useful. And in Quebec, it turns out that the words that people use naturally and sort of intuitively to complain about these things that I just described to you actually are paralleled almost exactly into legislation. The way that the warranty of quality is described in the law is using the same words that people will naturally use to complain, which is useful. And therefore, it would be nice to apply these rules. But it's not just a sort of a language parallel, there's actually other reasons why you want to apply the law of sale and the law of warranty of quality to these situations. And that's one, there's this conceptual overlap. But two, there's also that system of rules around the warranty of quality has actually been around for hundreds of years. It's sort of a finely tuned machine that over time and over experience has been sort of adapted to solve these kinds of problems fairly well. And you get the benefit of all that. And in Quebec in particular, you have a whole set of presumptions that actually mitigate a lot of economic imbalance that there is usually between the guy who developed the software and the client, or maybe sometimes vice versa, depending on the situation. So lots of advantages, lots of reasons why you'd want to apply these rules. So what's the problem? The problem is that when you buy a software, you usually get a license. And a license is just a right to use. It's not actually a sale. So you get a right to use, maybe you even buy a right to use, and it's maybe the sale of a right to use. But there's nothing wrong with that right. Nothing is sort of, when you're complaining that your software doesn't do what you expected it to do, it doesn't actually hinder your ability to use the software per se. Nobody's standing in front of you and saying you're not allowed to access that computer. It's there, it's installed, you can use it, just doesn't do what you want to do. But you didn't actually buy the software. It's not even clear that you can buy software per se in the rules of intellectual law property. So that means that we don't necessarily get the benefit of this entire edifice of the warranty of quality and all the sort of conceptual and historic advantages that come with that. So there's this risk, and that's what I wanted to sensitize you guys to it. And there's lots of really interesting solutions that lawyers like to argue about that might bore you to death. If you're interested, come talk to me afterwards. I'll tell you all about them. But the simple solution to this problem is that if you're a client or if you're a software developer, just talk to the people and make sure that in contracts you say, we will apply the rules of sale. And then you will get the benefit of this entire edifice of rules that will be useful. And that's the end of my talk.